Therapy can be very intimidating when you first start. I know for me, whenever I first started therapy, it was very intimidating having to talk to a stranger and tell them my whole feelings and everything I went through and everything I'm going through. So it was very intimidating if you're going for the first time. Now imagine that you're going to a psychiatrist. This psychiatrist starts diagnosing you with schizophrenia, and you just went there for depression and insomnia. So obviously you're like, what the hell? Like, okay, I guess I have schizophrenia now. Now on the first session, you go and they lay you on a medical bed and they basically drug you so that you can sleep through this whole process. So it's basically called sleep therapy. You're slightly awake and you realize that the psychiatrist put something over your face or over your eyes so you can't see. You feel them touching you inappropriately. This is exactly what happened to Roxana Vargas, which she went to go see a psychiatrist named Edmundo Chirinos. This all happened in Venezuela, and she was 19 years old when she first went to go see him, and also 19 years old when she was brutally murdered by him. So this is the story of Roxana Vargas and her psychiatrist Edmundo Chirinos. Viewer and listener discretion is advised. This episode contains discussion of sensitive topics that may be distressing for some audiences. Please take care while listening, and if these topics are triggering for you, we encourage you to prioritize your well-being. Welcome to Taste the Tea podcast. My name is Teresa, and in this podcast, we talk about true crime. So if you're interested in true crime, please subscribe, like, comment, and if you want to watch my previous episodes, feel free to watch those on my channel. Edmundo Chirinos. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. I'm so sorry. I did not look that up before I did this podcast, or this episode. But basically, this man was born on August 12th of 1935. And he was born in Churaguana? I'm so sorry. And his profession was a psychiatrist and a politician. So not much about him is out there of his upbringing. But basically, I mean, he studied to be a psychiatrist. He went to college and all this stuff, right? So that's a little bit about him. And in Venezuela, he built a career as like I said, a psychiatrist in a private clinic in Caracas. There's this document that I found. Basically, this person that went to his clinic talks about how it looks like in the inside. On the day I visited, several manic-looking men whom I took to be junkies were loitering on the sidewalk outside the entrance. Inside the waiting room was humid and jungly, full of ferns. There was a 5-foot-high waterfall in one corner and a smaller one in Dr. Chirinos' office. Water steamed over stones and plaster seahorses and plastic shells. It's meant to be relaxing, Dr. Chirinos said. I guess it seems calming, but I guess when you start realizing the things that he would do in this office, it starts being a little bit weird. Yeah, so when you start realizing everything he did, he was trying to do, I don't know, set the mood. I don't know. It was weird. Okay, let's continue. So the same person talks about how he looks. So Dr. Chirinos is a small man in his late 60s with carefully combed thinning hair, impinged eyes, and bushy eyebrows. He was wearing a white coat and he kept his hands clasped in his desk. So he's a really small man that looks really creepy. If you see a picture of him, I'm going to put a picture of him here. He looks really, like, creepy to me. Very creepy. Very nasty. Like, he just looks disgusting. Sorry. No, not sorry, because he did a horrible thing. He looks disgusting. He looks horribly, like, just not cute at all. He looks like one of those guys that I mean, I feel like girls would understand this more, but he looks like a guy that just looks like a pedophile and you don't want to go near him. That's what he looks like. Um, so yeah, that's the best we could describe him, and that's literally what he is. But anyways, he had many people go to him, really powerful people go to him. Even like the president of Venezuela, Hugo Chavez, from 1999 to 2013. And he ended up Hugo ended up dying because of cancer in March 5th of 2013, and he was like 58 years old. But, to be a psychiatrist of the president at that time is crazy. I mean, you must be a really good psychiatrist if you are the psychiatrist of the president, right? Wrong. In his career, he ended up finding himself, or so he states, finding himself curing or treating patients that mostly suffer with severe stress. That the reason why mostly people were going through stress was because of the political uncertainty in Venezuela. How was he as a psychiatrist? Well, there was a dark side in his career, right? In 2008, Roxana Vargas was one of his patients who he diagnosed with schizophrenia. Now, she ended up going to him because she was depressed and because she had insomnia, and she was in like an emotional distress, right? And he diagnosed her with schizophrenia and personality disorder. So it's like, that doesn't make sense. I mean, it's crazy because, schizophrenia, it's one of like the very um it's one of the very like most severe psychiatric conditions. So for him to, or for her to go to him because she was depressed and was emotionally distressed, and also, having problems with sleeping, and then you're told that you have schizophrenia, it's like a shock, right? But he stated that she had schizophrenia. Now, Roxana Vargas, she was a 19-year-old girl in Venezuela. She was born in Venezuela, and she was going to school for journalism. Recently, she had moved from her hometown, which was called Valle de la Pascua, and I hope that's how you pronounce it, because I looked it up, okay? I looked it up, but that's it, right? But she moved from her hometown, and this caused her a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, and an eating disorder. So it just all connected all at once, right? So Ana Teresa, she was the mother of Roxana, right? And she previously was a patient of Chirinos. We're gonna call him Chirinos, right? So she was a previously a patient of Chirinos, and she recommended her daughter to Chirinos. So I guess like now the feeling of like a mother, you know, recommending your daughter to a psychiatrist that you thought you could trust, and then later find out all the things that he did to her. She had first So Roxana first had an appointment on October 2007. So, I mean, this was not that very long ago, which is crazy. But Chirino suggested a sleep therapy. Now, this involves a basically an injection, a sedation of some medication, and no one questioned it. No one questioned it because, I mean, he was known as a really good psychiatrist. His mom, or her mom, Ana Teresa, really trusted him. So no one questioned it. Everybody was like, okay, let's do it. On the second session, so that was the consultation is when he diagnosed her with schizophrenia. That was like maybe an hour of a consultation, right? Now, the second session lasted from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. why do you need to be there for that long? I mean, I don't know. The sessions to me would probably last maybe an hour, hour and a half, at max maybe 2. That's a very long time from 1 to 5 p.m. After this session, she asked her mom to go to the store because she can get some pads because she like randomly started her period. Red flag number 1, right? So she, randomly started her period, and then suddenly the next day, her period has stopped. So she never really started her period. Something happened in the session to where she started bleeding. They ended up asking Chirinos about this, and he said it was a side effect of the medication. Now, they believed him. They believed him because he was very calm about it. I mean, he seemed very confident when he said that. And like I said, he was very trusted. So it was hard to see red flags at this moment because of how known he was, and then because of the previous of Ana Teresa, the mother of Roxana, how she was previously a patient of him. So I mean, it's it makes sense, right? Because I mean, we can't blame them for anything, so it makes sense. You cannot see the red flags at this point, for them at least. I could, right? Because I don't know him. So she kept attending many times after the second session, right? Each time her memory was literally like washed off. Like she did not, it was very like fuzzy. She could not remember much about it, especially when she went into the sleep therapy. Now, she did start telling her mom that he treats her with such kindness. Now, this I felt like it was odd, right? It was odd to me because of the fact that, she's a 19-year-old, an older man. I mean, I guess she was like making it seem like he was really nice, like, oh yeah, he's really kind. But it just, I guess because I know what happens, it really like rubs me the wrong way and makes me feel weird and icky. But to me, it was kind of that comment was a little bit weird. There was a session, she was put down into sleep therapy, but she was able to like think. She was awake. She was slightly awake. So she knew what was going on. She could feel what was going on. She could hear, she could see a little bit, but she was still weak. She wasn't able to move properly. Like if she was sleeping, but slightly awake, like half asleep, if that makes sense, right? So Roxana, she she was injected by the meds that Chirinos, would give her during these sleep therapies. And she had half of her like basically her eyes were half open. He ends up placing a pillow over her eyes so she can't see. She realized that she was braless at this moment, or topless, right? He ends up putting his fingers or finger in her mouth and then kisses her. So was the very first moment where she started realizing what was going on in these sessions when she was asleep, right? And then he puts his fingers in her vagina and then starts buttoning his pants, and she can hear this, and she obviously thinks, oh my god, like something's gonna happen. And right before he's about to penetrate her, she gains the strength, or finds the strength, to push him away. Thank God for that moment that she was able to push him away, because like, just, to put this out there, Roxana was a virgin at this moment. And so she never been like sexually um she never had a sexual relationship with anybody, and never had a moment like this. So it would have been very traumatic, but still at the same time, she was still like dealing or like something very traumatic was happening to her because a man was touching her in places that she's never been touched before. So it was very like it was a big shock for her. And her fear really got her to move and push him out of the way. So when she did, he quickly pulled his pants up and he ends up hugging her, and he switches his tone. He starts talking calmly and sweet and all this stuff, and he's insisting that the medications and the sleep therapy, this is all the medications and the treatment like causes you to have confusion. And he keeps repeating this to her and basically stating like you'll be hallucinating, that none of this is real and all this stuff, right? Crazy. So yeah, so she ends up getting out of this session and tells her friend Valentina. So when she tells her friend, Valentina was like, "You need to tell your mom because this is crazy. If you keep going to the sessions, I mean, who knows? He might start going further and, start sexually assaulting you." Well, that is sexually assault, right? So she convinced her to tell her mom. Valentina ended up convincing Roxana to tell her mom. So Roxana ends up telling her mom, and her mom believes her. She's like, okay, yeah, like, what the heck? What's going on? So she wanted to, obviously, she believed her, right? But she wanted evidence. And so she ended up taking Roxana to a gynecologist to confirm, you know, the everything that Roxana was telling her, right? As soon as they went, um, they confirmed it. The gynecologist confirms that fingers were put into her vagina because, you know, I don't know if you remember, but the first session or the second session that she had, she was bleeding. So something was being penetrated into her and caused her to bleed because, like I said, she is a virgin. So she's never had intimate intercourse. Ana Teresa ends up taking Roxana back to her birthplace, right? Or back to where she was born. And she ends up going to a new psychiatrist. Awesome. She's starting a new life. She's gonna, get through this traumatic time, you know. She's gonna become a great person. She's gonna get through her depression, right? So when she's going to this psychiatrist, this is obviously a very more trusted psychiatrist. She did a good job because Roxana started recovering from everything that she was going through, like her depression and all the stuff that she was going through, like I said. And because of all the sessions that she was going with this psychiatrist or going to this with this psychiatrist, and her session started October 22nd of 2007. So it was a little bit after, the situation that happened with what's his name, Chirinos. By December 18th of 2007, she was cleared and was stable enough to return to her normal routine. But she was recommended to still continue have checkups, to continue having checkups with a trusted colleague of the psychiatrist that she was seeing back in Caracas. So she ends up returning Caracas and continues her study there because she was studying there before, this whole situation happened. When she returned, she even fell for a boy named Mariano, but allegedly couldn't stop thinking about Chirinos. So what was going on there in her mind, right? There are two versions. I was gonna say one, but there are two versions to the story, right? The first one is that people say she fell in love with her abuser, with Chirinos, and was blinded by the authority that he had and the charm of an older man. So being, yeah, charmed by an older man. So that's the first theory that people have. Now, there's another one that is told by Ana and Marina, which is a sister of Roxana, that she wasn't in love with him. She wanted to she wanted revenge. She felt humiliated, robbed of her innocence, and believed no one could ever want her after this. So, I mean, I don't know. Because in her journal, from what I read in the book, so I read a book. It's called Sangre en, Sangre en el Diván. Sangre en el Diván. Sorry. But anyways, that's what the book is called. In this book, it states about a journal that she had. Now, in this journal, she states that she has this crush on this boy named Mariano. Um and but for some reason she wants to go back to Chirinos to have sexual relationships with him and forget about Mariano because she doesn't want Mariano to be the reason why she is hurt. So she wants it to be Chirinos, like full on be him. The reason why she's in so much pain, the reason why she's struggling with this trauma, right? But I don't know. It seems a little bit weird. Everybody deals with trauma differently, but this situation, the fact that she wants to go back to her abuser and have actual like sexual relationships with him, because like to this day at that moment she's still a virgin, like he'd never penetrated her um all the way, if that makes sense. So she wants to do that, and she explains that her first time is not going to be so romantic, it's going to be on a medical table. So it's just a little bit odd, but like I said, everybody deals trauma differently. So it was just a lot of people got kind of thought of this very like she was in love with Chirinos. But then it's like back and forth type of emotions because she tries to get she tries to get revenge, but we'll see. Let me continue with the story and I'll let you know. But that's the situation. That's what she puts in her journal, right? She ends up going back to Chirinos. So she does what she says on that journal, right? This man is over 60 years old. Like, what the hell? Like, I'm not. And look how creepy he looks. Like, I wouldn't go back personally, but like I said, everybody does or deals with trauma differently. You never know what, you're going to do in those situations, right? Until you're in it. But right now, I would say I wouldn't go back. So she ends up frequently having sex with Chirinos. And Roxana ends up telling her mom about this. She tells her mom all the things that they do, or that, all the times that she has sex with him. And Ana Teresa was not happy at all. Obviously, like, you find out that your daughter is going back to her abuser, the guy that traumatized her, like with ever having, or like traumatized her by ever having or never wanting to have sexual relationships with another man. It's just obviously she's not happy, and she begged her to stop, but she said, no, I know what I'm doing. So was this revenge that she was doing, or what? Why did she have to have sex with him for her to get revenge? I don't know. Ana Teresa was still in, her born, or her birth town where she was born. So Ana Teresa was still there, but she threatened to leave her husband Ana Teresa's husband, um, to go and take care of Roxana so that she wouldn't be doing these things. But she never did, right? Yeah, she's staying with her older sister at this point. So her mom is not in the area, right? And she's 19 years old. I mean, she's a full grown adult. So at this point, you really can't tell her what to do because she's an adult, but and she doesn't live with you. So it's very hard, right? So this doctor named Rousseau, Rousseau. Sorry. So this doctor named Rousseau, he was the person that Roxana would check in with. Because you remember how she still had to have checkups. So he was, or that doctor was I'm sorry, it was a girl. She was the person that she went to go do checkups on or check-ins on with from time to time. And she knew about this relationship that she had with Chirinos. And I'm not sure if you can do anything. I mean, you're a full grown adult. It's not like she was a minor. So, I mean, you really can't do anything but advise them to not do that. But she is a full grown adult, so she could do whatever she wants legally. So, when, the fact that Roxana is over here telling the doctor that she's having these relationships, Chirinos was not happy about that because he found out and he didn't want that. And so he ended up trying to break the check-ins between this doctor and Roxana, and it worked. I don't know what he said to Roxana for her to never go back and give these checkups or check-ins with this doctor, but she never went. She never went and it worked. And I don't know what he said. I don't know how he convinced her. I don't know what he did. But she never went back. The last day of Roxana's life was on July 12th, 2008. Roxana asked her sister that day if she could go to the mall with her. But Roxana's sister ended up staying home because she had back pains. So she didn't end up going with her, right? Supposedly, her sister had found out about this whole Chirino situation, the fact that she was having these sexual relationships with him. And she also found out that Chirinos used to go to this pharmacy and would develop these rolls of film. And in this film, there was a bunch of pictures of girls posing naked or in a very scandalous, skimpy clothes. And then others were equally undressed, but they were sleeping. So, who was he taking pictures of? Why was he taking pictures of these girls? And the fact that he went to go develop them, not thinking that they're going to see them. I mean, I don't know how they didn't report it. The pharmacy didn't report that, he had these pictures of these girls because that was a bunch of pictures. But yeah. And supposedly in these pictures, it appeared that they were at a medical office. Could be his, right? So police ended up finding these photos later on, right? And there was about 1,200 photos of these girls and 3 videos of girls as well. And 3 of the pictures were Roxana. So, I mean, I don't know what he was doing with those photos. I don't know what his thought process was, but I don't even want to know because that is nasty. That's so sad. That day, Roxana ends up leaving the house without obviously her sister, and she doesn't go to the mall at that point. She ends up going to see Mariano. Mariano is the boy that she she had a crush on, right? But before she leaves, she ends up leaving her journal, basically with all her secrets, ends up leaving her journal on her desk, and it's just lying there, right? Her mom believes or speculates that she knew that she was going to die, because it's why else would she want to leave her secret right there out in the open for anybody to look at it, right? Because obviously they were speculating these moments. She told everyone, her sister knew, and her sister lived with her. So it was like, to her mom, she felt like, this was a sign, this was a symbolism that she knew that she was going to die that day. She ends up going to the shop that Mariano works at. And this was around at like 2, and this was around like 2:05 p.m. They were there, or she was there, Roxana was there till the shop closed, which was at 6:30 p.m. And after the shop closes, Mariano and Roxana ends up going to the mall. So when they get there, you know, Mariano also was speculating or having some sort of like, yeah, speculation. Yeah. He was speculating that she was doing something with Chirianos, and he I feel like everybody kind of knew at this point what was going on. But nobody said anything to her at times, and he didn't really say anything to her, but he knew what was going on. Roxana's mom ends up calling her around that hour. So around 6:30, she ends up calling her, right? Roxana picks up, and she ends up telling her mom that she's gonna go see Chirianos after the mall, after she hangs out with Mariano. Chirinos, sorry. Did I say Chiranos? Chirinos. So Roxana ends up telling her mom that she's gonna hang out with Chirinos after hanging out with Mariano. Ana Teresa is like, why would you go see that old man? Like, are you still seeing him? Like, can you just like let it go? And she's like, I know what I'm doing, mom. Leave me alone, right? After that phone call with her mom, she ends up getting a phone call from Chirinos. And this was literally 11 minutes after her mom calls her. This was around 6:41 p.m. Mariano's grew suspicion, like I said, and knew that Chirinos was calling her after, the mom called her. He also like speculates because she's like turning away mysteriously, trying not to like show who's calling her. And that phone call lasted very short. It was very short. 3 minutes after Chirinos calls her, he calls her again, and this call lasts a minute and 30 seconds. Now, after this call, Roxana ends up telling Mariano that she has to leave. So Mariano ends up walking her to her taxi outside, and the taxi, on the sign, it states that it was going to take her to the plaza of Venezuela. But Mariano knew that she was not going there. She was going to stop by Chirino's office. So that was the last time that Mariano saw her alive. And that was around like close to 7 p.m. Roxana had texted Irma, which is her friend, that she was going to see you know who. Irma was going to spend the night that night. And they had planned to go meet at a shopping center. To confirm their meeting, Irma ends up calling Roxana at 7:40 p.m. And at this time, Roxana was already with Chirinos. When she answers, she sounded very like she was in tears, and she kept it very short. So the conversation wasn't very long. But I guess Irma didn't really think much of it, I guess, or she did feel like some sort of like iffiness, because it's like she was in tears. I mean, I don't know. I would have asked, or I would have called, or I've been like, where are you? Let me go pick you up if she was in tears. But this is what it states, right? This is what the book states, that she was in tears and that she kept the conversation short. This was confirmed by police when, everything went down, when they looked at her phone records. And it states that he called her again at like 7:13 p.m. and this phone call only lasted about 14 seconds. So this was enough time for him to be like, "Hey, where are you?" and her to be like, "Oh, I'm on my way." And then bye. That's it, right? So Mariano, like a little bit later, he had a feeling, like a weird feeling, and he was like, "I don't know, this just feels odd to me. Let me give her a call." So he ends up calling her at like 10 p.m., but it literally went straight to voicemail, like if her phone was off. So that was that, you know. She was already, so come to find out, at that point, at that time that he called her, she was already dead at this point. Roxana had landed an internship. So Roxana had landed an internship before, right? Before this situation at a Radio Caracas television, so RCTV, right? And this was an exciting moment for her. But Chirinos was not happy because of some history with one of the owners of the RCTV, right? But also Roxana at this moment, she ends up writing a public post, or ends up posting a public post, basically stating to all the moms to never take their daughters to Chirinos. And this is kind of what the post states. Dear parents, with complete honesty, I recommend that you never take your children to that doctor. And if your children are already seeing him, get them out as quickly as possible. Don't take them back. Don't let him take advantage of your daughter. This is said for everyone's good and to put on an end to this kind of person who, because he has no home or family, prefers to satisfy his sexual desires with his patients. If you don't know this doctor, please forward this email so others can be aware of how medicine in this country has become and so inefficient, mainly due to the lack of ethics many doctors have. Despite his advanced age, he likes to take Callis and have sex with his patients. Be very careful with your children. He can take advantage even during sleep therapies. Several cases have already occurred, but out of fear, their names have not been made public. And Chirinos found this out. Chirinos saw this message and allegedly, um, Roxana was purposely doing this, was purposely having him or wanting him to see this post so he could know what her plan was. Now, this kind of, goes against the fact that she was in love with him, which, I mean, it goes back and forth, right? But it seemed like she was trying to take revenge with this, post. So it was really weird, but then, she goes and has sexual relationships with him. So it's a very odd behavior, but like I said, everybody treats trauma differently, right? She also states that he ends up bribing, his patients. So supposedly he had bribed her with money or offered her money to, as like a kind payment for his sexual favors, and in exchange for her silence. I don't know if this is true, but this is what she stated, right? At 8:30 p.m., Irma ends up calling Roxana one more time. And her phone rang at this point, but there was no answer. And she ended up going to the spot where they were supposed to meet, right? And then when she gets to the spot, Irma tries to call again. And like again, no answer. She ends up texting her several times, but still Nothing. At 10:30 p.m., Irma went home and she tried to go to sleep, but she couldn't. She felt like this sort of like stress or anxiety. She felt like something was wrong. At 3 a.m., Marina ends up calling Irma. Marina is the sister of Roxana. She ends up calling Irma, asking if Roxana was with her. And so immediately Irma was like, something is wrong. Irma stated that something happened to Roxana and Chirinos has something to do with it because that was the last person that she was with. So Marina immediately calls her mom, immediately calls Ana Teresa and tells her what is happening. So as soon as they get off the phone, Ana Teresa immediately tries to call Chirinos. The first call, there's no answer. The second call, the line seems to be busy. So she's like, okay, he's awake. Like, he needs to answer the phone. The third call, she calls his home. And at this time, it goes to voicemail. And she ends up leaving a voicemail, sorry. And when this voicemail is going on, he ends up answering within the voicemail while she's leaving the voicemail, right? And she asks him, I know she's with you. I just want to know, or I just want you to tell me if she's okay. And Chirino states that he doesn't know where she is and he hasn't seen her in months. About Roxana, right? And Ana Teresa is like, that's BS. I know exactly what has been going on. Roxana has told me everything. And I know all the things that you have been doing to her and everything that you guys have been doing. And Chirinos lost his patience at this point, and he's like, do you have proof? Do you have proof? And he like repeated this like 3 times. And supposedly, Irma has stated that they had been arguing a lot lately, Roxana and Chirinos. And Roxana had told her that he had threatened that he knew a lot of people that could harm her whenever he wanted. But then later reassured her that he would never be capable of hurting her at all. Yeah, right.
¿Por qué una joven de las tantas que asesinan todos los fines de semana la relaciona justamente conmigo? Porque fue paciente mía. Ha habido muchos pacientes míos que han muerto, algunos asesinados. Entonces, cada vez que un paciente mío muere, de la forma que sea, tiene que aparecer el nombre del mundo chileno en toda la prensa.
So her search was not very urgent, like by the police. They were not very urgent because she wasn't very known in the community, and also she was 19 years old, so they thought that she was just like a runaway. And at this point, she was just like a missing person. She wasn't dead. Nearly 36 hours, her body was found in a dumpster. On Monday, July 14th, 2008, at around 9 a.m., a security guard was led by a guard dog to the dumpster, and they found her facing up, partially covered by wooden boards on one side of her face, with transparent bags with transparent bags over her and a log placed between her legs. Her shirt was pulled up to her breasts. Her skirt was lifted to her abdomen, exposing her bra and underwear, and she was barefoot and had no purse and no ID on her. Chirinos was immediately a suspect at this point. By all the phone calls that they found and all the phone call reports and surveillance camera, Chirinos was arrested a couple months after Roxana's death. So he inflicted severe blunt force trauma to her head, causing multiple fractures to her skull. So what she went through that day was literally like insane. Like for her to just go through that and having to be killed by just getting hit in the head multiple times, and that's how you die, right? So sad. But on September 2008, Chirinos was convicted of homicide of Roxana Vargas by the Fifth Trial Court, and he was sentenced only 20 years in prison, like for murdering somebody. 20 years in prison. I guess it's different over there, but whatever. Around 14 women ended up coming up and stating that they were sexually abused by Chirinos as well. In these, sessions, in this psychiatrist, in these sessions, right? But basically, how the crime unfolded. So, how that day, or what happened that day that Roxana went to go meet Chirinos. So, basically, Roxana had threatened to expose his pattern of sexual abuse. And, he obviously found out about the post that, she was stating to people to never take their daughters to the psychiatrist. And there was an argument that escalated, and Chirinos struck her in the head repeatedly with a blunt object. I don't know exactly what it was, but he repeatedly hit her with an object. And there was blood found from Roxana in his office. So obviously, it showed that the incident happened in his office. After killing her, he ends up throwing her body in a remote dumpster, and that's how she was found. Chirinos ends up dying after being granted house arrest, which I don't know how you can get house arrest, because supposedly it was like because of his age. I don't know how much that is true, and because he had like some sort of health issues. I don't know how much that is true. I don't know if that's the reason why, but he ended up being granted house arrest in March of 2012. And then he dies in that year because of health reasons, and he died at the age of 78, which he deserved to. I'm sorry, but yeah, he was a horrible human being, and what he did to Roxana, she did not deserve that. Like, nobody deserves to just take a life. And the fact that he thought that he was powerful enough to do so was crazy. And because he was a psychiatrist, he took advantage of all these girls, 14 girls. I don't know if it's including her, if it's including Roxana, but it's insane that he had the ability or felt like he was able to or had the power to control these girls and do this to them and cause so much trauma. Because you're a psychiatrist, you're supposed to take away the trauma, not give it. So, yeah, that's the story of Roxana Vargas. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And please let me know in the comments what other types of true crime or what other types of cases you want me to talk about, and I'll gladly do so. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Bye.